Welcome to World Alert Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. In a decision that reverberated from Washington to Wall Street, the Supreme Court delivered a historic blow to unchecked presidential power. The landmark 6-3 ruling struck down the Trump-era tariffs, redrawing the boundaries of economic authority in the United States. This wasn't just about steel or aluminum, it was a fundamental re-evaluation of a president's power to declare a national emergency for economic purposes. Stock markets surged, and industries long squeezed by high import costs began to process what this meant for their future. For some, it was relief. For others, especially in domestic steel and aluminum, it was deep concern. The court's decision is more than a legal document. It's a catalyst for immediate, dramatic change across the economic landscape. It signals a significant shift in the balance of power between the branches of government and promises to reshape America's relationships with its trading partners. The world is watching to see what America does next. To grasp the gravity of today's ruling, we need to revisit 2018, a year that marked a dramatic turning point in U.S. trade policy and international relations. That year, the Trump administration imposed sweeping tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, citing national security concerns as the primary reason for these unprecedented measures. These tariffs didn't just target adversaries, they hit close allies as well, upending decades of established U.S. trade policy and sparking a wave of global retaliation that reverberated through international markets. The administration argued that a robust domestic metals industry was essential for national defense, but critics quickly labeled the move as economic protectionism, warning of unintended consequences. The tariffs raised costs for a wide range of products, from cars and construction materials to everyday items like beer cans, causing prices to rise and impacting American consumers and businesses alike. In response, trading partners imposed retaliatory tariffs on iconic American goods, targeting products like soybeans, motorcycles, and whiskey, hurting exporters, farmers, and manufacturers across the country. The policy was enacted under Section 232 of a Cold War-era law, which gave the president broad authority to restrict imports for national security reasons, a power that had rarely been used in such a sweeping way. The result was a tit-for-tat trade war, with tariffs and counter-tariffs escalating economic tensions worldwide, shaking investor confidence and disrupting global supply chains. The broad and controversial use of national security as justification set the stage for a series of legal challenges as businesses and lawmakers questioned the limits of executive power. Ultimately, the conflict over these tariffs, and the sweeping authority behind them, landed before the Supreme Court, drawing national attention to the stakes involved. The outcome of this legal battle would not only impact trade policy, but also redefine the boundaries of executive authority in matters of commerce and national security, and it would force the nation to reconsider how much power a president should wield alone, raising fundamental questions about checks and balances in American democracy. The Trump-era tariffs split the nation, igniting fierce debate across the political spectrum. Supporters hailed them as a bold move to protect American industries, while critics warned of unintended consequences rippling through the economy. Domestic steel and aluminum producers saw them as a lifeline, pointing to reopened mills, new jobs, and a sense of renewed hope in communities long plagued by factory closures. For many workers, the tariffs represented a chance to rebuild their lives and restore pride in American manufacturing. But manufacturers relying on these metals faced soaring costs, struggling to keep their businesses afloat. Many were forced to pass these expenses on to consumers through higher prices on everyday goods, from cars to washing machines, making life more expensive for millions of families. Critics argued the tariffs were a hidden tax on American families, threatening more jobs than they saved. Some economists warned that the policy could trigger a cycle of layoffs and reduced consumer spending, deepening economic uncertainty. The Chamber of Commerce and business groups warned of widespread economic damage, predicting that the ripple effects would be felt far beyond the targeted industries. Retaliatory tariffs from allies targeted American exports, hurting farmers and exporters who suddenly found their products shut out of key markets. For many in rural America, the trade war brought anxiety and financial hardship. The trade war strained diplomatic relationships and undermined America's reputation as a champion of free trade. Allies questioned U.S. leadership, and long-standing partnerships were put to the test. The policy, meant to strengthen the nation, left many feeling isolated and economically vulnerable. Small businesses in particular struggled to survive as costs rose and customers dwindled. The debate over whether protecting one industry was worth the cost to millions of Americans became a political flashpoint, fueling passionate arguments in Congress, on cable news, and around kitchen tables nationwide. The controversy exposed deep divisions within industries, communities, and even families. The question of who truly benefited and who bore the burden became a source of lasting tension. Ultimately, the fallout from these tariffs set the stage for a legal reckoning, as lawsuits challenged the administration's authority to impose such sweeping measures. The Supreme Court's decision would determine whether such sweeping actions could stand, shaping the future of American trade policy for years to come. The Supreme Court's decision didn't judge the wisdom of tariffs, it questioned the president's authority to impose them. The majority found that national security, under Section 232, couldn't be stretched to cover general economic concerns. The Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to regulate foreign commerce. This ruling reasserts congressional authority in trade, narrowing the President's ability to act unilaterally. Future presidents will need clear, specific authorization from Congress for major trade actions. The decision forces a return to public debate and negotiation, rather than swift executive action. Legal scholars hail it as a crucial check on the expansion of executive power. The message is clear: the president's powers are substantial but not unlimited. The Supreme Court's decision will have immediate tangible effects. Automakers, major consumers of steel and aluminum, will see costs drop, potentially lowering car prices or slowing price hikes. Construction costs are expected to fall, spurring new projects and making housing and commercial space more affordable. Even grocery bills could ease, as lower aluminum costs reduce packaging expenses for food and beverages. For consumers, these small savings add up, offering relief after years of inflation. But not everyone benefits. Domestic steel and aluminum producers now face renewed foreign competition, risking job losses and financial strain. Companies that invested in new production under tariff protection may struggle. The ruling highlights the risks of relying on government protectionism. Winners and losers will emerge as the economy adjusts to a post-tariff reality. The decision underscores how policy shifts in Washington ripple through every corner of American life. The new landscape demands adaptation, from businesses, workers, and policymakers alike. The Supreme Court's ruling is making waves across the globe, welcomed by America's allies as a significant step toward repairing relationships that have been strained in recent years. This decision is seen not just as a legal milestone but as a diplomatic gesture that could reshape the tone of international cooperation. The removal of tariffs signals a return to more predictable, collaborative trade, an essential foundation for global economic stability. Businesses and governments alike are hopeful that this move will reduce uncertainty and encourage long-term investments in cross-border commerce. Retaliatory tariffs from other countries are likely to be lifted, reopening vital markets for American exporters and farmers who have faced years of uncertainty. This could mean new opportunities for growth and prosperity in rural communities and manufacturing hubs across the United States. Companies like Harley-Davidson, which once considered moving production overseas to avoid tariffs, may now reconsider those plans, keeping more jobs and investment at home. However, the US-China trade conflict remains unresolved, as separate tariffs on Chinese goods persist. This ongoing dispute continues to cast a shadow over the broader trade landscape, reminding us that not all challenges have been overcome. The ruling may encourage the US to work more closely with allies on China, rather than acting alone. By building coalitions, America could strengthen its negotiating position and promote fairer trade practices worldwide. International bodies like the World Trade Organization could see renewed relevance as countries look for impartial forums to resolve disputes and set global standards. The decision reaffirms America's commitment to rules-based global trade, signaling to partners that the US values stability and fairness in international markets. It sends a powerful message. The US is recommitting to legal and institutional frameworks that have underpinned decades of global economic growth. This could foster new cooperation and stability in international commerce, encouraging businesses to expand and innovate with greater confidence. The world is watching closely to see if America will lead by example once again, setting a standard for openness and collaboration in the years ahead. The next chapter in global trade is just beginning, and its outcome will shape economies and lives around the world for years to come. At the heart of this saga is the definition of national security. Steel importing businesses argued the Trump administration stretched the term too far, using it to justify broad economic protectionism. The government countered that economic security is national security, and the president must have discretion to act. The Supreme Court sided with the challengers, ruling that Section 232 was meant for specific, tangible threats, not general economic concerns. The decision sets a new precedent. Emergency powers require a direct, demonstrable link to national defense. The judiciary signaled it will scrutinize future emergency declarations, especially those affecting domestic policy. This ruling could impact how presidents use emergency powers in areas beyond trade. The debate over what constitutes a true crisis is far from over, but the president's word is no longer final. Many see today's ruling as a victory for checks and balances. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to regulate foreign commerce. The decision restores power to the legislative branch, ensuring major economic policies require public debate and compromise. It protects the integrity of national security as a justification for action. Presidents will now need to negotiate with lawmakers to achieve trade goals. Congress can no longer delegate authority and avoid responsibility. The ruling demands accountability and transparency in trade policy. In a polarized era, lawmakers must now rise to the challenge of governing effectively. This historic ruling marks a turning point for America's economy and its role in the world. The era of broad, unilateral trade actions is over. The balance of power has shifted. The removal of tariffs could slow inflation and boost growth in key sectors. Domestic steel and aluminum industries face tough competition and must adapt. The U.S. has an opportunity to reclaim its leadership in global trade, championing open markets and cooperation. The decision reaffirms core American principles: checks and balances, rule of law, and open competition. It's a reminder that the Constitution's safeguards are alive and vital. The Supreme Court hasn't solved every economic challenge, but it's reset the debate. America's next steps will shape its future, and the world's. The story is far from over.